You know, usually when we talk about a masterpiece, say, an incredibly intricate piece of antique furniture or like a beautifully carved sculpture, there is this really profound sense of reverence.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you run your hand over the wood, you see the tool marks, and you think about the singular human genius, the sweat, the sheer time it took to create this one-of-a-kind object.
Right, there's a soul to it because it is entirely unique. I mean, we value it precisely because it cannot be perfectly replicated.
Yeah, exactly.
The asymmetry, the slight imperfections, those are the fingerprints of humanity,
Right.
right? And that's what we are actually reviewing. We're worshiping the labor and the authenticity of the whole thing.
But imagine staring at this breathtaking, one-of-a-kind, hand-carved masterpiece, and as you trace the intricate details, you find a tiny, mass-produced factory sticker hidden right on the bottom.
Oh, wow. That would just ruin it.
Right. Suddenly, the entire context of the object changes. The genius you were admiring wasn't a master craftsman. It was an incredibly efficient machine, tricking you into believing a specific narrative about its creation.
It's a really profound psychological betrayal when you think about it. You realize the very foundation of how you evaluated that object and, perhaps the world that produced it was just a carefully constructed illusion.
Yes, exactly.
The object's material doesn't actually change, but its meaning evaporates entirely because the narrative of its creation was a complete lie.
And that sudden, chilling realization that the foundation of your reality is built on a manufactured lie is the beating heart of the book we are exploring in today's deep dive.
It really is.
We're looking at Jack Vance's classic science fiction novel, Emphyrio, and our mission today for you, the listener, is to unpack what is honestly a masterclass in world building.
A total masterclass.
We are going to explore how entire societies can be built on fundamental deceptions, the insidious nature of social control, and what happens when one single individual decides to weaponize historical truth.
And we should probably start with the architecture of how this story is delivered, because the opening is it's a psychological trap in itself.
Oh, for sure. Set the scene for us.
Well, we don't begin with a quiet village or a hero dreaming of adventure like you might expect.
Yeah.
We open with a young man named Gil Tarvok, and he's already caught.
He's already in trouble.
Big trouble. He is strapped to a chair, a prisoner of the ruling class, who are known as the Lords, and he is undergoing this really intense interrogation.
It is such a phenomenal framing device because it completely subverts the traditional expectations of a coming-of-age story.
It totally does.
Like, Gil is sitting there, captive, and insists to his interrogators that he cannot simply offer a straightforward confession.
Right. He basically says, if you want to understand my crimes against the state, I have to explain the evolution of my entire life.
Which turns the entire narrative into one massive flashback.
Exactly. And this structure is a brilliant manipulation of reader psychology. When a story is told chronologically, you spend a lot of time waiting for the inciting incident.
Yeah, you read about the character's peaceful childhood, and you just wait for the other shoe to drop.
Right. But here, the shoe has already dropped. Explosion has already happened. We're essentially just walking through the blast radius trying to figure out where the bomb was planted.
It turns you into a jury member right from page one. The suspense isn't about whether Gil is going to rebel against this monolithic system.
No, we know he did.
Right. We are looking at the direct result of that rebellion. The tension comes entirely from wondering why he rebelled and how a seemingly ordinary person ended up in an interrogation room facing death.
Which transforms the text into a very specific type of Bildungsroman.
A Bildungsroman, right? A coming-of-age story?
Right. But usually, a Bildungsroman tracks the moral and psychological growth of a protagonist into functional adulthood within a society.
Like learning how to fit in.
Exactly. But here, we're tracking the moral and psychological radicalization of a protagonist against his society. Knowing his grim present circumstances casts this long, dark shadow over his innocent childhood.
Oh, absolutely.
Every seemingly innocuous conversation he has as a child, every small observation he makes about his world, is just loaded with fatalistic meaning.
It makes me wonder, though, does knowing Gil gets caught make his journey feel almost deterministic?
How do you mean?
Like you were watching a child and thinking, which one of these moments is the invisible tripwire?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I feel like it actually forces you to pay forensic attention to the societal mechanisms around him rather than just passively waiting for an action sequence. You have to scrutinize his environment just as closely as he does.
That is a great point. And that environment is one of the most intricately designed cages in all of science fiction.
It really is a cage.
To understand the magnitude of whatever put Gil in that interrogation chair, we have to forensically examine the suffocating society that molded him.
So take us back to the beginning.
Right, so we are taken back to Gil's youth in a city called Ambroy on the planet Halma. He lives with his father, Amiante, who is a master woodcarver.
Which sounds lovely, but it's not just a quaint character detail.
Not at all. The entire economic foundation of the planet Halma is based on extreme artisanal labor. All work on this planet must be intricately handmade by artisans belonging to strict guilds.
And here is the truly fascinating mechanism holding it all together. Any form of duplication is a capital offense.
Duplication is the ultimate sin. That is the defining law of their entire reality.
Let's really pause on the economics of this because it's wild. If I carve a beautiful chair, and then I build a machine or a mold to duplicate that chair, I haven't physically harmed anyone.
No, you've just made more chairs.
Right, so why would a society make that punishable by death?
Because you have to look at what mass production actually accomplishes. Mass production democratizes access and wealth.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, if you can make 1,000 chairs in the time it takes to hand carve one, the price of chairs plummets. Suddenly, the working class can afford nice things.
Right.
And more importantly, you, the creator, can accumulate wealth rapidly because your output is no longer tied strictly to the hours in the day and the speed of your bare hands.
Oh, I see. So by banning duplication entirely, the ruling lords are artificially enforcing a state of hyperscarcity.
Precisely. They ensure that only the elite can ever afford luxury, cementing these goods as the ultimate status symbols.
But the effect on the workers is even worse.
Far worse. By forcing everything to be handmade, they ensure that the working class can never scale their labor. They are trapped in a perpetual cycle of immense effort for minimal output.
Their upward mobility is just mathematically capped.
Exactly. It is economic entrapment disguised as a cultural reverence for authentic craftsmanship.
It's like a dystopian version of the arts and crafts movement.
That's a really good way to put it.
It's as if the only way to read a book today was to hire a monk to hand copy it with a quill, and using a photocopier was literally a death penalty offense.
Right, which sounds absurd to us.
But it's a brilliant way to guarantee the working class remains subservient, perpetually busy, and entirely dependent on the meager wages the lords hand down.
And those wages are incredibly predatory, by the way. These highly skilled artisans are paid an absolute pittance in basic vouchers.
While the lords just sit around.
Yeah, the lords live in a state of extreme, idle luxury, funded by what seems, on paper, like a microscopic tax, just 1.18% on all the workers.
Wait, 1.18%? That sounds like nothing.
That specific number is actually a brilliant piece of historical allegory by Vance. It sounds small, almost negligible.
Yeah, you wouldn't even notice it on a receipt.
Right. If you are an impoverished woodcarver, giving up a little over 1% of your meager voucher doesn't spark a riot the way a 50% tax would.
That makes sense.
But when you levy a 1.18% tax against an entire planetary population of laborers producing nothing but high-value artisanal goods, it functions as a massive, invisible vacuum.
Oh, wow.
It funnels an astronomical aggregation of wealth up to a tiny, non-producing elite.
So it mirrors feudalism perfectly, then.
Oh, entirely.
The serfs produce all the actual value, tying themselves to the land, or in this case, the workbench, while the aristocracy skims just enough off the top of everyone to live like literal gods.
And it reflects contemporary mechanisms of wealth inequality, too. The working class is economically immobilized, despite being the sole engine of production.
Because they're just kept hovering right at the edge of subsistence.
Exactly. They have just enough to survive, and they are too exhausted by the sheer manual labor required to meet their quotas to ever organize a rebellion.
But as history shows us, economic disenfranchisement on that scale always breeds resentment eventually.
Oh, inevitably.
The people making the beautiful hand-carved chairs get tired of sitting on the dirt while the lords lounge on their work. A system built entirely on economic starvation and artificial scarcity is inherently unstable.
Right. The lords know this. So to prevent the inevitable uprising, the lords of Halma instituted a system of psychological control that is as absurd as it is terrifying.
Right, the welfare agency.
Yes. This is where the world building shifts from economic critique into profound, dark social satire. The welfare agency, which is enforced by officials known as kobolds, mandates that all citizens participate in a bizarre pseudo-religion.
And the core tenet of this state-sponsored religion is jumping.
Basically, yes, it requires the citizens to regularly gather and perform what they call saltations.
Let's make sure you, the listener, really grasp this. Saltations are essentially complex acrobatic leaps and gymnastics.
Yes, forced acrobatics.
I want to try to visualize this reality. You have a planetary population of exhausted, impoverished woodcarvers, weavers, and metalworkers.
Right.
Their hands are bleeding, their backs ache from hunching over workbenches all day, and their government mandates that they gather in public squares to perform synchronized acrobatic jumping jacks.
It's completely surreal.
Yeah.
The superficial justification is likely framed as public health or communal unity.
But it's really just control.
Exactly. The society uses welfare not as a mechanism of support, but as a tool for repression and total surveillance. It explores this horrific trade-off. The state will provide the absolute bare minimum for your survival, your food vouchers, but the cost is complete behavioral conformity.
But wait, calling that welfare is ridiculous. It's a complete inversion of the word.
It really is.
If you have to perform physical acrobatics just to earn the right to eat the food you already paid for with your labor, that's not welfare. That's extortion masked as charity.
It is absolute coercive dependency. And the absurdity of the saltations is exactly the point.
What do you mean?
Well, why force an oppressed populace to perform acrobatic leaps? Why not just force them to recite a Pledge of Allegiance or, I don't know, bow to a statue?
Because bowing is passive. Jumping requires you to actively spend your vanishingly small reserves of energy.
Exactly. And more than that, it is the ultimate test of compliance through humiliation.
Well, that makes sense.
Forcing grown, exhausted master craftsmen to jump around like trained circus animals proves that the state owns not just their labor, but their dignity and their physical bodies.
That is incredibly dark.
If you can compel someone to engage in a physically absurd, completely meaningless ritual just to receive basic sustenance, you have broken their spirit entirely.
You've demonstrated that your power is so absolute it can override their basic sense of self-respect.
Right. It crushes their internal locus of control, neutralizing the will to resist before the thought of resistance can even fully form in the mind.
It's basically a performative physicalization of a bullshit job. It serves no purpose other than to remind you who is in charge.
Exactly.
And we actually see the alternative in the text through a group called the non-cups.
Right, the non-cups are fascinating.
These are people who have completely dropped out of the society. They refuse to participate in the labor, and they flat out refuse to do the saltation.
And as a result, they live in absolute squalor on the fringes of the city.
Yeah, and the state allows them to exist as a physical warning, conform and jump, or starve in the dirt.
The non-cups serve as a terrifying object lesson for the regular citizens. They represent the absolute lack of a safety net. The system presents this false dichotomy: participate in your own humiliation or suffer total ruin.
There is no third option for structural change.
None whatsoever.
But amidst all this daily humiliation, this strict conformity, there is actually one piece of culture that the state allows. In fact, it seems they encourage it.
Yes, they do. But of course, it serves a highly manipulative purpose.
Right. This brings us to the myth of Emphyrio.
So young Gil and his father attend these public puppet shows, which are one of the few forms of communal entertainment allowed in Ambroy.
And what are they about?
The subject of these shows is a legendary folk hero named Emphyrio, who supposedly lived long ago and fought the system to broker some kind of peace or justice.
But there's a catch, right? Every single story about Emphyrio is incomplete.
Yes, that is the crucial detail. The puppet shows always end differently. There is no canon.
No definitive lore.
Exactly. There is no definitive historical record of what he actually accomplished or how he did it.
Which is a brilliant exploration of how authoritarian systems manage historical narratives.
It really is. The legend of Emphyrio represents the missing truth of Halma's history. But look closely at the medium through which this history is transmitted to the public.
It is a puppet show.
A puppet show.
Not a monument, not a historical text in a library, not even like a state-sanctioned documentary. A puppet show. A medium inherently associated with children, with toys, with unreality.
Exactly. By reducing a potentially dangerous historical truth to mere performative entertainment, the state completely trivializes it.
They defang it.
Right. It takes the reality of a historical figure who actually fought for liberation and sanitizes it into a harmless fairy tale.
But wait, why allow it at all? If I'm running an oppressive, hyper-surveilled regime, my very first move is to ban all talk of past heroes.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah, I'd erase the name Emphyrio from the language entirely. Why even plant the seed of a rebel hero in the minds of the oppressed?
Because a perfectly sealed pressure cooker will eventually explode. The lords understand the psychology of the oppressed.
Oh, they need an outlet.
Exactly. The people need an outlet for their immense frustration. They need to dream of a better world, otherwise the despair just turns into nihilistic violence against the state.
I see.
So by giving the artisans a hero, but keeping his story vague, incomplete, and unresolved, the elite provide a psychological pressure valve.
The people get the emotional thrill of rebellion without any of the actual instructions.
Precisely. They get to sit in the audience and cheer for Emphyrio.
Yeah.
They get a hit of catharsis.
But because the story has no clear ending, no specific tactical details of how he fought or what systemic changes he achieved, it never provides a concrete blueprint for actual rebellion.
Right. It satisfies the emotional need for resistance without ever threatening the status quo.
It's the exact same mechanism as modern corporate pop culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we are endlessly fed blockbuster movie franchises about ragtag groups of rebels blowing up evil empires. You go to the theater, you watch the underdogs defeat the fascists, you buy the branded t-shirt, and you feel a profound sense of catharsis.
Yeah, you feel like you did something.
But you've basically just turned the concept of revolution into a safe, consumable product. The system is making rebellion entertaining so it doesn't become actionable in the real world.
That is a flawless contemporary analogy.
You go back to your cubicle the next day feeling like you fought the power, when all you really did was pay the power for a movie ticket.
The puppet show of Emphyrio is the blockbuster franchise of Halma. It pacifies through the illusion of dissent. The state has commodified the very concept of resistance.
It absorbs the revolutionary energy rather than igniting it.
Exactly.
So this careful, systemic balance of oppression, economic starvation, physical humiliation, and pacification through entertainment works perfectly. It is a finely tuned machine.
A machine that has likely run smoothly for generations.
Right. Right up until Gil's father crosses the ultimate line, Amiante moves from passively consuming the myth to actively seeking the history.
And this represents the tragic inciting incident of the entire narrative. Amiante is an unconventional man. He's observant.
He pays attention.
Yeah, he senses the artificiality of their world. He takes the subversive step of teaching his son, Gil, the rare skill of reading archaic script.
Which, in a society where information is transmitted via vague puppet shows, is practically weaponizing his child's mind.
It is a profound act of quiet rebellion. But Amiante goes further. He manages to uncover an actual ancient document containing real information about the Emphyrio legend.
And he commits a massive state crime.
He copies it.
He duplicates it, the ultimate capital offense on Halma.
And the consequences are immediate and utterly devastating.
They arrest him.
Amiante is arrested, and he's sent to something the state calls a rehabilitation center.
Which is not a good place.
No, he never returns. He is effectively killed by the treatment there.
Wow.
And this absolute tragedy is the catalyst that sends Gil on his quest. It crystallizes his vague, simmering dissatisfaction into a laser-focused obsession with objective truth.
Let's examine the semantics the state uses here, too. They don't call it an execution, they call it rehabilitation.
Ah, yes. The classic authoritarian euphemism.
It implies the state is benevolent and the citizen is merely sick. It pathologizes rebellion.
Right. If you don't agree with the system, you aren't a political dissident.
Yeah.
You are mentally unwell and require treatment.
It strips all the political agency from the victim.
It really does. But we have to look at why Amiante's specific crime was met with such extreme lethal force.
What do you mean?
Well, people must occasionally try to duplicate a chair or a vase to save time, right? The state likely punishes that harshly to maintain the economic model. But Amiante didn't copy a physical object of commerce.
No, he duplicated history.
Exactly. He threatened the foundational lie.
Because the entire society is held together by the careful curation of what the citizens are allowed to know about their past.
Right. The puppet shows work because they are contradictory and vague. But an ancient written document?
That is empirical evidence.
Yes, that is a thread that, if pulled, unravels the entire tapestry of the Lord's power.
Amiante wasn't just a copyright infringer in their eyes. He was an existential threat to the state's reality.
Controlling history is the prerequisite for controlling the future. By uncovering the past, Amiante threatened to provide the exact blueprint for rebellion that the puppet shows were designed to obscure.
You have to wonder about Amiante's mindset in that fatal moment. Why did he choose to copy that specific document?
It's a huge question.
Did he know he was essentially signing his own death warrant? Was he intentionally trying to spark a revolution in his son, knowing it would cost him his life? Or was it just pure, fatal academic curiosity?
Given that he deliberately taught his son to read archaic script, it strongly suggests he was preparing Gil for something greater than just carving wood.
He was planting the seeds of critical thought.
Exactly. He may have underestimated the speed and brutality of the surveillance state, but his death acts as the ultimate catalyst. It proves to Gil that the system is not merely unfair, it is murderously desperate to hide something.
So, fueled by this immense grief and knowing from his father's fragmented research that the real answers lie off-world, specifically at the Historical Institute on Earth, Gillo realizes a harsh truth.
He cannot dismantle this system from within its borders.
Right, he is just one young man against a planetary police state that demands acrobatic obedience. He has to escape Halma.
Which initiates a massive shift in the narrative style and thematic pacing of the novel.
The story really changes here.
It does. Lacking any legal means to travel or the funds to pay for transport, Gil and a group of his friends orchestrate the outright theft of a Lord's space yacht.
They just hijack it.
They hijack it and set a course for Earth.
The narrative dramatically shifts gears right here, breaking out of the slow, oppressive, almost claustrophobic sociological critique and exploding into a high-speed adventure.
And the symbolism of this theft is immense. A space yacht is the ultimate physical manifestation of elite power.
Oh, for sure.
It represents their immense unearned wealth, their parasitism on the artisan class, and their literal ability to elevate themselves above the world they are oppressing.
So stealing it is a big deal.
Stealing it is an act of extreme individualism striking out against a stifling collectivist system. This tension between the brilliant, determined individual and the suffocating bureaucratic collective is a recurring hallmark of Jack Vance's work.
But it's also a profound philosophical proof of concept, isn't it?
How so?
Well, by successfully stealing the yacht, Gil isn't just running away from his problems. He is actively proving to himself and to the reader that these seemingly omnipotent, godlike lords are actually quite vulnerable.
Oh, that's a great observation.
Yeah.
It shatters the illusion of their invincibility.
Yeah.
Authoritarian regimes rely heavily on the projection of total control. They need the populace to believe they are all-seeing and untouchable.
Right. But if a handful of disgruntled, supposedly uneducated artisans can bypass their security and steal the ultimate symbol of their power,
It exposes the fragility of the ruling class. Their power is a bluff.
what's equally fascinating is how Vance handles the actual science fiction elements of this escape. He accelerates the pace of the story to mirror the velocity of their liberation.
Yes, the pacing gets very fast.
But the space travel itself, like the actual mechanics of flying a faster-than-light spaceship to Earth, is treated as completely mundane. It's just a backdrop.
Which is a very deliberate and effective choice by Vance. In lesser hands, a sci-fi author might get bogged down in the engineering of the hyperdrive or the orbital mechanics of the escape.
Right, giving us pages of technical jargon.
Exactly. By treating the space travel as basically a bus ride, Vance keeps the narrative focus locked entirely on the sociological and political evolution of the characters.
The technology is irrelevant.
Exactly. What matters is the human will to break free and seek the truth.
So, this physical journey through the stars ultimately leads to an intellectual journey. Gil arrives at the archives of the Historical Institute on Earth, which is the repository of all human history.
And there, buried in the records, a truth much, much more shocking than he could have ever imagined is waiting for him.
I remember reading this part. It's crazy.
He uncovers the staggering reality about his homeworld. The ruling class, the lords who have violently oppressed his people for centuries, the ones who enforce the duplication ban and mandate the saltations,
Yeah.
they are not human.
It is such a wild ontological twist.
They are biological constructs.
Yeah.
Literal flesh and blood puppets created and controlled by an alien race called the Damarans, who live completely unseen on Halma's moon.
Let's just pause and let the sheer scale of that deception sink in for a second.
It's massive.
The elite class, the ones hoarding all the wealth, the ones who murdered his father for copying a piece of paper, they aren't even real. They are a synthetic front.
It is a signature Jack Vance revelation. He pulls the rug out from under the reader, violently recontextualizing everything you've read up to that point.
And the macroeconomic reality of this arrangement is brutal.
That's horrific.
The Damarans use these biological puppet lords to extract a massive planetary tribute. The lords take all these exquisite, handmade artisan goods from the population of Halma, and they funnel them straight to the Damarans on the moon.
Right, and then the aliens sell these goods to the rest of the galaxy.
Exactly, keeping the vast majority of the profits. Halma isn't just an oppressive human society. It is an entire planet functioning as a secret intergalactic sweatshop for an alien race.
It perfectly illustrates the theme of history as a weapon. The Damarans were only able to achieve this massive, centuries-long economic enslavement by controlling the historical archives on Halma.
Because if the people knew,
Right, by erasing the true history of their invasion and substituting it with vague myths, they hid their colonial extraction in plain sight.
the structural parallels are mind-blowing here. The lords being literal biological puppets perfectly mirrors the puppet shows of Emphyrio that the citizens are forced to watch.
It does.
The entire society is a dark, literal reflection of its own cheap entertainment. The citizens watch wooden puppets acting out a fake history, while they themselves are being ruled by biological puppets enforcing a fake reality.
The symmetry is incredibly poetic and deeply cynical. It operates as a perfect allegory for proxy governments and hidden colonial extraction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The Damarans install a puppet regime, in this case literally, that looks like the local population, acts like a human aristocracy, and most importantly, absorbs all the hatred, resentment, and potential violence of the working class.
It's the ultimate galactic shell company.
That's exactly what it is.
The Damarans set up these biological lords as a layer of middle management. The lords are the ones who have to enforce the draconian rules, collect the brutal taxes, and deal with the constant threat of rebellion.
They act as a heat shield.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the real architects of the misery sit safely on the moon, totally insulated from any consequences, just quietly hoarding all the wealth.
It is a flawless system of exploitation. It relies entirely on misdirection. The artisans hate the lords, completely unaware that the lords are merely tools.
The system is perfect, unless, of course, someone manages to find the ledger that proves the shell company exists.
Which is exactly what Gil has done. He has the objective truth now.
But knowledge is only power if it is actually applied. Having found the ultimate weapon in the archives of Earth, Gil knows he can't just publish an academic paper about it and hope the universe intervenes.
No, nobody's coming to save them.
He has to return home to pull the trigger.
And this brings us to the climax of the novel. Gil, armed with this explosive truth, returns to Halma. But he doesn't just return as Gil Tarvok, the son of a woodcarver.
Right?
He assumes the legendary identity of Emphyrio.
He becomes the myth. He uses their own psychological pressure valve against them.
Exactly. He stages this dramatic public confrontation. He corners one of the lords in front of the populace, and he forces a public confession, physically proving that the lord is a biological puppet.
He exposes the Damarans on the moon to the entire planet.
And the result is immediate. He sparks a swift, total revolution, and the era of hidden alien rule ends practically instantly.
It is a beautiful exploration of the concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy, or what modern theorists might call hyperstition, a fiction that makes itself real.
Right, Gil literally becomes the hero he idolized as a child. He proves the immense kinetic power of a story.
Because the state used the story of Emphyrio to pacify the people.
Yes, but Gil realizes that a story, when backed by objective truth and wielded by someone willing to act, can inspire world-shattering real-world change.
Now, there is a common critique of the novel that we should address here.
About the ending.
Yes, some readers feel the ending is rushed and somewhat abrupt. And sure, on a surface level, we just spent the vast majority of the story building this incredibly detailed, oppressive world, learning about the guilds, the economy, the saltations.
And then the entire global regime collapses in just a few pages.
Right.
From a pure pacing standpoint, it can feel like a sudden deceleration.
Yeah.
But we have to analyze this narrative choice structurally. Think about the architectural integrity of the Halma regime.
Oh, it's not built on a complex web of competing political interests or a massive military presence or genuine ideological buy-in from the populace.
Exactly. What is it built on?
It is built entirely on a singular, massive, hidden lie.
Precisely. When a massive system of control is entirely dependent on keeping one specific secret, exposing that secret destroys its structural integrity completely.
There's no backup plan.
There is no fallback position for the Damarans. Once the artisans see with their own eyes that the lords are biological constructs, the illusion of their divine right to rule evaporates instantly. The rapid collapse isn't a pacing flaw by Vance. It is a profound thematic point about the inherent fragility of oppressive regimes based on deceit. A lie requires constant, exhausting maintenance. The truth does not.
You know, if you've spent your entire existence trapped in a pitch-black room, turning on the light doesn't happen gradually.
That's a great analogy.
It happens in a fraction of a second. The darkness doesn't slowly fade away. It vanishes the exact moment the circuit is completed.
Wow, yeah.
I think this abrupt ending is Vance's way of showing just how completely hollow the Damaran Empire truly was. The moment the people realized the monsters weren't real, the nightmare was over.
That is a very powerful way to frame it. The speed of the revolution is directly proportional to the depth of the lie. The Damarans had no actual power over the populace. They only had the illusion of power.
So, this sudden, brutal collapse of the regime leaves us with some profound, lingering lessons. Let's synthesize what we've unpacked here, because the implications extend far beyond the pages of a 1969 science fiction novel.
Emphyrio is a uniquely somber and introspective work within Jack Vance's larger bibliography, which is, often known for more swashbuckling, picaresque space operas.
It's definitely heavier.
Yes. This book stands as a highly focused, powerful argument for the absolute necessity of individual curiosity and the moral imperative to question authority.
The thematic weight is staggering. We have the constant tension between individualism represented by Gil and his father, who insist on seeking truth, and the crushing, homogenizing weight of collectivism enforced by the Saltations.
Absolutely.
We see a stark, uncompromising reality of wealth inequality, where the people who literally build the world with their hands are violently barred from enjoying it.
We also see a terrifyingly prescient vision of state surveillance and control masked as public welfare.
Oh, yes.
The idea that basic survival is made contingent upon humiliating performative obedience is a critique that resonates very strongly when we look at modern bureaucratic mazes designed to punish the poor. And above all, we see the realization that controlling history, controlling the narrative of the past, is the ultimate key to controlling the present and the future.
When you reflect on the arc of the narrative, it's just incredible. We started with this passive, observant 7-year-old boy in the city of Ambroy, watching a confusing puppet show and wondering why his father was so sad.
Right.
And we end with a determined young man who rips down the sky and reshapes the destiny of an entire planet. It strongly reinforces the novel's central thesis. A single person, armed with objective truth, can change the world.
It is a deeply optimistic message buried inside a very cynical, dark world. The truth is out there in the archives, and it is powerful enough to shatter empires if someone is brave enough to find it.
I love that romantic, philosophical idea that the truth will set you free. But isn't the real, gritty lesson of Emphyrio that truth only works when it is combined with radical, undeniable action?
What do you mean?
Well, Gil didn't just learn the secret in a library on Earth and expect the universe to course-correct itself. He didn't just write an academic treatise about it.
No, he didn't.
He flew a stolen spaceship back home, assumed a legendary identity, and physically forced a public reckoning. Truth is the ammunition, but human action is the weapon.
That is the most accurate synthesis. Truth without action is just trivia. Gil had to become the catalyst his father couldn't be. He had to embody the myth to destroy the lie.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with a new, challenging idea to mull over, something that builds strictly on the revelations we've discussed today.
It's a connection that becomes glaringly apparent when you look at the beginning and the end of the story side by side.
Right. Think back to the foundational law of Halma. We learned early on that duplication making a copy of anything was the ultimate capital offense.
The worst crime possible.
It was the law that kept the workers poor. It was the crime that got Gil's father killed. But then, in the final act, we learned that the ruling lords themselves were biological puppets.
Yes.
They were constructs. They were, by definition, duplicates of humanity created in a lab by the Damarans.
The irony is staggering once you see the whole board.
Therefore, the ultimate hypocrisy of this society isn't just the economic theft. It isn't just the forced acrobatics.
Right.
It's the fact that the strict, lethal ban against copying was enforced by copies. The rule was put in place specifically to prevent humanity from realizing they were being subjugated by artificial
It
duplicates.
was a massive psychological projection of their own illegitimate nature onto the populace.
Exactly. So it forces you to look around and ask, in the systems of authority that you navigate every day, who are the true creators and who are merely the copies enforcing the rules to protect a hidden power?
It's a haunting question.
Just like looking at that beautiful hand-carved masterpiece and finding the factory sticker hidden underneath, once you see the lie, you can never unsee it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the archives of Halma. Keep questioning the narratives you are handed, and we'll see you next time.